You think this thing was fast last time we saw this?
This right here though, this is something else!
Yes, the tune that we've added to this had some pretty insane results. Over 10 miles an hour added top speed, insane acceleration, but at the same time, the range was barely affected at all and it's been super reliable to ride. But I got something in this box that's gonna up the ante even more. See that thing right there? That's Pee Wee. This is the big leagues. That's right, we're putting into this bike the GOAT, the S tier, the fill-in-the-blank trendy word that means best of the best, the Sotion FW22. And not just the motor, inside this box we also have a full Sotion kit which replaces pretty much everything inside of this bike, and I'm really excited to get into it, so let's start tearing this thing down. This install is truly a long time coming. I have wanted to put this thing in ever since I received this, which was December of last year. It's been sitting that long. Sometimes I guess that's just the nature of things when it comes to making these videos for YouTube, as opposed to just doing it in my garage like I would be on any given weekend. There's always the timeline, things have to come out before the other, blah, blah, blah. But now the Alpha Pro is finally getting that attention it deserves and all of the Go Faster goodies along with it. Not just the parts I'm putting in today, but then after we actually put this together and test it and ride it out and see how it feels, then I'm gonna add even more to this thing to make it the ultimate bike. You'll see later on. So today we're basically just stripping down this bike to the bare bones. I'll show you the full kit, everything that comes with it, and we're gonna throw it into the bike, building it back up. You saw me take the battery out from underneath the seat. Now I'm gonna take off the front fender just for added clearance, and that way I get better access to the controller and the wiring. So I'm also gonna take off the plastic cover around the controller so I have access to all of those wires and pull out the 4 bolts that connect the controller itself in place. So you can see the controller right here in the front, and basically all the way around is the wiring harness, and it's just kind of shoved in there. This is no really rhyme or reason. It's just hid behind that plastic cover. And it's basically just the front where everything is accessed. If you go over here, now that the battery is out of the way, there's this metal plate right here where everything is mounted to on the back side, and it's all the way across, so there's not really a good way of getting to everything. The only connection really is just this big fat one here for the battery, obviously. Now before we go ripping into the wiring harness and the controller itself, I think it's actually best to start back up here on the handlebars, because a lot of that stuff that's connected to the wiring harness ends up here, like the throttle and the display. So if we pull those things off behind the rear number plate here, that way we have access to everything and we can just pull it all off together in one bit. That was weird and out of focus. Stupid camera, but incredibly convenient. So now that we have at least the 2 things that mattered up top, the display and the throttle, off and down here, we can continue with this and get rid of the 4 bolts that hold the far driver controller together, so that way we can see the backside with the connections for the wiring harness and the connections for the motor. Well, one of those phase wires was giving me a hard time, but I managed to get the screw loose, and here we have it, the controller and the entire wiring harness. It's that simple. This is one of the things that I love about electric dirt bikes, because they can be just so simplified and basic, although you'll see with the new one, it's gonna get a lot more complex, and even more so in another video that I have upcoming. It's simple, it's effective, but highly customizable. And now that we got all of that out of the way, most of it anyway, now it's time to work underneath here with the motor. So we just gotta pull off these 2 panels on the side and then undo a couple of bolts. I think there's 3 that hold the motor in place. You know, another thing I like about electric bikes is that they're not very messy, although when you pull off the chain, it gets a little grimy, even though mine was pretty clean. But back to the motor. Now, I'm not the first one ever to throw an F22 into one of these bikes. Maybe the Alpha Pro variant, but certainly not something like a Yozma. And one of the things that I know because of that, I've seen videos, is that this motor is so big that it really can't come out from this side or the other. It's best to just take the skid plate off with these 4 bolts and then just drop it underneath. Holy cow, these things are on tight. Oh, I don't generally have to break out the impact gun, but I almost had to there. And I guess I could use an electric or impact gun like most everybody else does on their bikes, but I don't know, there's something about hand tools that I just really appreciate. Also, it lessens the potential of you stripping something out, because I've definitely seen those install videos where manufacturers will show you how it's built and they just zip those things in there, and I've seen the results of their handiwork sometimes. You can't get anything out again. Oh, there it goes. And now I think we can just twist this out and down. And we're clear. We're on the finishing end now. This thing is as close to a skeleton as we need it to, and it's incredibly light. I mean, this weighs nothing now. But before we go any further in actually throwing in new parts, we want to clean everything up first. I think this is a great opportunity to get all of that grime that chain has been slinging down there off. And before we even get throwing this stuff onto the bike, I gotta show you what's in the box. We have here throttle, battery leads, wiring harness, display, brackets, more brackets. We got the main enchilada here, which is the controller. Look at that, it is gorgeous. And the second main enchilada, the motor itself. Another very gorgeous piece. And I actually want to put everything together as like a bench test right here before it actually gets thrown into the bike. That way I can see where everything goes, how things are plugged together, and how everything works, and hopefully that it works well. All right, we got all this connected. It's actually pretty easy, even though this looks really complicated. They do give a nice visual diagram. I'm a very visual person. This was very handy. But now, let's scooch this stuff over because we have the last two components of this. We got the battery, and this kit, while it came with a lot of things, did not come with a key, so I actually pulled this one off of the Alpha Pro, so that way we can at least plug this thing in and get it switched on, because that's what matters. And for this scary part, hopefully it goes well. So far so good. Here's the display, we'll set that right there. Hopefully this turns on. There was a big warning on that thing to say connect it correctly, because if you connect this to this big battery, ooh, bad things will happen. All right, 3, 2, 1. We have lights. Do we have action? Oh my gosh. Let's tap it into sport, see what that does. Oh, yes, yes. But let's take a closer look at this powerhouse. Like I mentioned earlier, this is Sotion's FW22 motor, and it's a big deal. For bikes like these, most often the motor that's inside of them will be rated for something like 2,000 watts or 2 kilowatts. And the Alpha Pro here is actually an exception to that because it has a bigger motor than that. There's no specific rated power listed on the website for this bike, but I'm willing to guess that this is about 3.5 kilowatts. The FW22 here, however, is rated for 12 kilowatts. 12! That's more than triple the power. Same stats go for peak power, which this one actually does have rated on the website. It's at 7 kilowatts, but this, oh, you know, 25 kilowatts. We also saw when we were tuning the Alpha Pro with the stock motor that this thing spins at about 3,800 RPM or so, which is pretty good, not gonna lie, but this one is 7,000 RPM. That's almost double. Are you starting to see why this right here is the GOAT? Which leads me really nicely into the other part of this kit that makes it an absolute powerhouse, which is the controller here. This is a Sotion controller, although I think it's just a Sotion in name. Underneath the skin, this is really just a FAR driver, but in order to put all that power that the motor can potentially give down to the wheels, this thing really ups the amperage. The max line current or battery current that this controller can handle is up to 450 amps, and as of recording this, I think I'm safe in saying that no one actually makes a battery for these type of bikes that can even handle that kind of amperage. But once they eventually do, you know we're gonna try that out. All right, let's get to building. Reverse order, putting the motor in first, because I think this is probably gonna be the most difficult, and it's held in with these three. You have to use the existing bolts, really long ones that go all the way through with some nuts on the top, and then in between are some spacers. So the stock motor had a very small spacer at the bottom, very large one at the top, and I think this needs to take a different sized one because the kit came with some other spacers of its own that are a little smaller than the black ones on the bike. Okay, so I haven't even started attempting to put the motor in because I wanted to check something, and I'm glad I did because I'm starting to see an issue with this so far. It might not show up 100% on camera, but this one is sticking out a lot more than this one. So if I use the spacers that this one provides, this sprocket is gonna be inset way too much. Oh yeah, it doesn't take a trained eye to realize just how off that is. That would never work. Well, that certainly sucked. It's not really fun to find out that you can't use the spacers that you were given, but as you can see, it is in the bike and it is properly spaced, so let me tell you what I did. First, I verified that the spacers that came in the kit would have fit, provided it was lined up appropriately, and this was exactly 35 millimeters. Then I lined up the old motor and the new motor with the sprockets perfectly aligned using the chain as a guide. I then put the original spacers on the original motor so I could see exactly what I was off by on either side. And I found out that that was about 5 millimeters or so on one side and 30 millimeters on the other. Now I could have cut these spacers down so that I could split the two, but doing so would lose a lot of material, and doing that 3 times with a hacksaw, it's not really gonna be perfect. So I went the janky and alternative route, which is a box of M8 washers and washer stacked. So now with 4 washers on one side and 19 washers on the other, we are perfectly in a line and everything is snug and tight. Hopefully that's the worst of it. Moving on. And we're moving up top so I can get the throttle and the display all situated. Now for the annoying part, which is the center display, and I've seen this before with everyone else that puts these kits on, but I was really hopeful that Sotion had fixed the problem because everyone complains about it, because right here is where it's supposed to mount. This clamp is just ever so slightly wider than the bar clamps. Why can't you just make this a little shorter, Sotion? Now to bring all the cables from the handlebars down so we can get it to the wiring harness. As annoying as these things are, I actually kind of like them because it makes everything just that much cleaner. It's like braiding hair, except not at all. Don't tell people that you know how to braid hair if this is all you do. So I took some time and did some much needed cable management, although if you look at it right now, it still looks like an absolute mess, but trust me, it's at least somewhat organized. At least the top looks good. But now comes the moment we've all been waiting for all these pieces from the motor to the handlebars down together. Everything needs to be connected together, and that means bringing in the controller. But I noticed a problem already before even attempting to connect everything in here. So I have the controller, as you can see. It's got a couple of brackets. Basically, this is connected now with angle brackets rather than those posts that the far driver were dealing with. But on the flip side here, you can see where all the connections lay out, and the battery is down here. And this is the way Sotion wants you to orient this, having the battery leads at the bottom, and I know that because if you flip it around, it says Sotion on the top, which is all well and good, but the battery lead that they gave me is pretty short and pretty thick, so that means it needs to bend straight up, and even then, there's no way it's gonna connect to the battery. So I guess I'll be rocking the Sotion upside down, but who cares because this is gonna be going so fast, no one's even gonna see. So now let's get everything connected and shove that wiring harness behind the controller so we never have to see it again, at least until the next episode with this bike. But at least we won't have to see it for now. Well, that's safe to say that sucked. As organized as I was trying to be with that wiring harness, it was such a clump that there was no way it was gonna fit behind this controller, because even though it does kind of punch out inside the frame a little bit, there's not that much space between the controller and the frame that allows space for any of those wires. So I took apart my bundling method and actually rerouted everything. So basically the wires go straight down, so that way I had enough room that I could be able to put this thing in here. I also had to make a change to the battery leads. These ones that they come with the kit are really nice, really thick, 6-gauge wire, but they were too thick in order to be able to tuck them up in there. I had, thankfully, a slightly longer one, which was nice, and an 8-gauge, so it's just a little bit thinner, but I think it should be okay. The prior one was a 10-gauge, so I think if anything, this is still an upgrade, and at least that way I can get the battery in. And speaking of battery, I could go ahead and put the stock battery back into that, but the stock battery was only capable of 100 amps, and the far driver that I pulled out of that was more than capable, so what's the point of this kit? So we might as well double the amperage with this battery from Amorg. And I know as of filming this, 200 amps isn't exactly mind-blowing. You can actually get battery packs for these bikes that go up to 300, but remember at the time that I got this battery, which again was late last year, the highest amperage available was 200 with this RS50 cell pack. So even as I chuck this brand new battery in, there's still room for improvement, but in this case, we're still doubling the power with the battery alone, and if the original battery pack made this thing go almost 60 miles an hour, who knows what's capable now that we have this. Honestly, that took a lot longer than I anticipated, not only with the motor alignment issues, but then that tangled mess of spaghetti they call wiring up front. So before I actually put a chain on and ride this thing, which is all that's left to do really, I want to turn it on first and see if I can connect it with the far driver app, because like I said, I assume that this is a far driver underneath. And it didn't have the plugs available for a Bluetooth dongle to be connected, so I'm also assuming and hoping anyway that this has built-in Bluetooth, which it looks like it does. I was able to connect. I'm not going to show you the tune today because that's a whole other video, and that way we can take a look closer at everything that it's set up with and what changes we can make to make this even more insane. But I just want to go in really quickly and check the max line current and adjust that if I need to, so that way I set it for 200, which this is maxed out at, and I can see that it does default to 250, so I need to make the change to 200. And there we go. And while I'm in here, I'm gonna do a quick auto learn because now the controller is fully connected to the motor, and I wanna make sure that everything is happy there and it has the proper settings.
But now we can finally take it out on the road and see what's what. Just a shakedown, I really just want to make sure that everything is functional and everything's buttoned up and where it's supposed to be and torqued everywhere, and, you know, making sure that it's gonna stay one piece. But I mean, come on, we're out here, there's a straight, might as well see what it's got. Okay. We've definitely hit a limit. It says 19, I saw 20 miles an hour on here. Didn't quite feel like 20 miles an hour though. And it wasn't, it was 31 actually. That's actually really good, and I know 31 miles an hour is like half of what we were doing previously, but that's an eco mode. We haven't even touched sport yet. Let's give it a little something in sport. Whoa! Right out the gate! This thing is ready and raring to go. And I thought it was just eco and sport, but I just realized that if you click the button again, there's a race mode. But that's for next time, so subscribe to stick around, and if you want to check out a video where I tuned it in stock form, click right there. This thing went almost 60 miles an hour in that case.